Hello, I've got a couple of Lightroom shortcuts for you in this tip, and they all have one key in common, and that is the Option or the Alt key. On Mac it's called the Option key, on Windows it's called the Alt key. And generally what the Option key does is it gives you alternative options for a specific thing, and that's what you'll also see in this video. So they're a little bit scattered throughout the different modules. For example, the first one that I have is in the Library module, and it has to do with adding keywords. So I don't know if you know that, but you can actually put keywords in sets. And for example, I have a keyword set here called marketing. Now what happens, you can assign up to 9 keywords in one set, 9 keywords that belong together for some reason, and you can then click on those keywords to add them to your image. But what happens if you hold down the Option or Alt key, and from now on I'm just going to call it the Option key because I'm working on a Mac computer, well, then you get this here, you get numbers, and that means that if you have a numeric keyboard, or as I have here a QWERTY keyboard, then I can just press the corresponding number instead of having to move my mouse across my Wacoms or my touchpad or whatever. So in this case, for example, suppose I want to use this image in my blog. Well, I just hold down the Option key and I press the 7, and as you can see, the keyword blog has now been applied to it, right? So, by the way, I'm actually using a Wacom tablet here. So what I've done is I've programmed the Option key on the second to last key of my Express key. So it's the same thing. If you don't have a Wacom, you can just use the Option or Alt key, but I'm gonna press this here because this actually is easier for me just to go here than it is to go over there when I'm brushing, for example. Okay, second tip, still in the or in the Library module rather, is when you hold down Option, you see you have a thing called Quick Develop. And what Quick Develop does is it lets you quickly adjust the settings of an image. Now, it's very limited in what you can do, but nevertheless it can be handy, because what you can also do in Quick Develop is, for example, if you have selected 2 images, now both of these images may have maybe had some exposure corrections done to them in the Develop module. Now, suppose I want to add a third of a stop exposure to both those images. If I want to do that in Develop, I have to do each image one by one. However, if I am in Quick Develop, I can just select both images and then click on the little icon here, and I can add 1/3 of exposure to both images regardless of what exposure setting they were on before, right? So let me undo that, because what I actually want to show you with this tip is if you have a limited number of options, but again, if you hold down the Option key, some of those options change function. For example, clarity turns into sharpening, and vibrance turns into saturation. So that's tip number 2, the Option key in Quick Develop. Now let's go to the actual Develop module, and here one option is, and let me select this image here, for example, is that holding down the Option key and hovering over the Reset button will change the Reset button into the Set Default button. So what you can do here is, if you want a specific image always to have a specific starting value, well, what you can do is you take any image that is taken with that specific camera, because defaults are camera specific. So you take that image, you apply whatever settings you want to be the new default, for example, more contrast, less saturation, maybe a specific camera profile, I don't know. And then you don't do anything else. For example, you're not going to correct the skew or the horizon or rotate it or whatever, because you don't want that to be a default behavior, obviously. So just anything that you want to be the new default, then you hold down the Option key and you press Set Default, you click on that, and this will make those settings the new default for any image that you import into your Lightroom catalog that was taken with that specific camera. Now if you go into the Lightroom settings, in the Lightroom preferences, you can even show in the presets option, you can also go further and make those specific defaults camera serial number specific or ISO rating specific. So that's an advanced feature. But anyway, so holding down Option turns the reset button into the set default button. So that's a good one to know. Now, if you're in, if you have an image, and for example, let me make a quick virtual copy because I don't actually want to mess the edits of this image up. So if you've done a number of edits on an image, and like here for example, and you want to change your mind, well, what you can do is if you hold down again the Option key, you will see that the tone section will turn into reset tones. So holding down Option and then you can click on reset tone to reset everything you've done in that particular section. All the rest, as you see, remains untouched. By the way, you can also just double click on the tone or on any other section header in a specific panel, and that will do the same thing. So if I double click, it will also reset those sliders. Okay, another thing you might know, so that was actually tip number 4 already, and another thing you might know is if you hold down the Option key and you drag, for example, the white sliders, you will get a black and white preview, and this will help you to determine your white point. If you're a Photoshop user, you know that you used to set your white and your black points. Now on this image, because I've had a tone curve, let me reset the image completely. Let me quickly rotate it a bit. So because I set a custom tone curve, what I'm about to show you doesn't really work. So again, I've resetted the image, I hold down the Option key, and now I drag the white slider, and you get a black screen, and suddenly you will see more and more colored specks appear. Now those are the places where my image starts to clip pure white. So I don't want to do that. Or generally you don't want to do that anyway. So the idea is that you drag the slider all the way up to where you see the first specks appear. And this will let you get the brightest image without any parts of your image being clipped to white. By the way, it's not really in the theme of the Option shortcuts, but there's another shortcut that is handy to know. That is, if you shift double click rather on the white slider, it will automatically set the white point to the point where Lightroom thinks it is best. Now as you can see, Lightroom thought +8, and I actually judged that I don't mind about a little bit of pure white, really those couple of pixels, so I judged I wanted it to be a little bit further. The same goes for the blacks sliders, by the way, and that is less common knowledge. It also works on the other sliders such as exposure. For example, if I hold down the Option key and I drag the exposure slider around, I also get that black and white preview with the clipping showing up in color. So that's good to know. So let me quickly reset all those settings by Option clicking on the tone, the word tone. Now, another thing you may or may not know is that if you want to add a split tone to your image, and it's very popular in black and white images, but you can also do it in color images to modify the color slightly. Well, if you want to add a split tone, the general procedure is to choose a specific color for your highlights, choose one for your shadows, and then dial in the amount of color for both that you actually want to add. Now, the thing is that that's a lot of work. So let me quickly Option click to reset shadows and highlights, because the same trick also works over here, obviously. And the way that I generally choose my colors is to hold down the Option key and then drag the hue slider. So again, I can do it from the keyboard, or I can do it from the Wacom tablet here, and this will temporarily show you that specific color or hue at full strength. Obviously, you don't probably want to apply it that strongly, but it gives you an idea as to the actual color that you're about to apply. So if I'm looking for a nice orangey color, well, then I know I should probably use something along the lines of 36, and then if I let go of the Option key, the color goes away, and then I can use the saturation slider to dial in the amount that I want. And I can do the same thing for the shadows, and a split tone is a very popular effect, and that gives you a cool shadow tint and a warm highlight tint. So again, I can choose what hue, what color of blue, what type of blue I want my black or shadow tinting to be, and then I can dial in the desired amount with the saturation slider. So there you have it, another trick, where another shortcut where the Option key comes in handy. Okay, we're already at number 7, and this has to do with the details. Maybe you already know that if you want to sharpen skin, that one of the ways to do that is that generally if you apply sharpening to an image, now this is a TIFF, so it's already been sharpened. Let me quickly look for a raw file here, if I have one. Okay, this is a raw file. Okay, so if I want to sharpen this, well, one way of getting away with more sharpening without being detrimental to skin tone, for example, is to hold down the Option or the Alt key while dragging the masking slider, because what that will do is it will give you a black and white preview, and anything that is high frequency detail, so that theoretically needs sharpening, will be in white, and anything that is low frequency detail, so anything that actually doesn't probably need sharpening, and where sharpening would only increase noise but not do anything visible, because it's in black you have the smooth areas basically, so you want to protect those from being sharpened. So you drag up this masking slider to where you have for you the ideal cutoff between white and black, so you're basically just sharpening the contours, and this works really well on close-ups of people, for example, because you can steer the sharpening away from the skin. The skin would be completely black in the preview, and then the eyelids and the lashes and whatnot and the hair would be white, because that would still have detail and therefore be sharpened. So that's a trick that probably some of you already knew, and if you don't, well, good for you. But a less known option is that the same Option key, when you hold it down on the Amount slider, or on the Radius slider, or on the Detail slider, will also give you a grayscale preview, which will accentuate the highlights. So basically what it does is it takes away the image information and it just shows you the contours, and this lets you apply the sharpening. If I increase this, for example, if I magnify this, this lets you apply the sharpening more thoroughly, and it lets you better judge what you're about to do in terms of sharpening. It also lets you decide more easily if you're not over sharpening your image. So while I'm in the Develop module, I have another tip for you, and that has to do with the brush. If I'm brushing on an image, for example, suppose I want to darken this here for a second, and I'm overdoing it, and I've painted a bit too far over the cloth, and I'm painting into the background. So what I actually want to do is I want to activate the eraser tool. Now I can go and click on erase and then erase parts away, but the trick is that if I hold down the Option key, then this turns, as long as I hold it down, this turns my pen into an eraser, and I can just erase away what I accidentally painted in. Now it's good to know, as you can see, that auto mask can be is an independent feature of the brush and the eraser. So your brush can be set to not be set to auto mask, and your eraser can be set to auto mask. So you can uncheck that obviously also. So here you go, another tip with the Option key in the paintbrush. Okay, second to last tip, and we're still in the Develop module, is if you want to copy settings from one image to another, or synchronize settings across images, if you click on the Copy button, well, then you will get the screen in which you can decide which settings you want to copy. And the same goes if you've selected two images and you click on Sync. You have the three dots, and those three dots will basically tell you that there are that there is a screen to follow, that there is a dialog box to follow. So you can choose whatever you want to sync in here. Now, if you do the same, you click on any of those buttons, but you hold down the Option key, then you see those three dots, they go away. Basically, what that means is that you will copy the settings from this particular image, but the settings that you checked the previous time. So it allows you to skip that step. So for example, if the last time you only copied or you needed to copy exposure, highlights, shadows, clarity, and let's say you wanted to also copy the split toning, right? So if that was what you chose last time, well, your choice is still in memory. So if you don't want to copy any other values, you just hold down the Option key, you click copy, and it will copy those values from this specific image, and then you can paste them onto any other image that you want. So it's a way to go about your copying or your synchronizing more quickly if you don't want to add any other parameters to your copy or your syncing. Now, the last trick, and there's probably more of those shortcuts around, but these are just 10 that I know and that I frequently use. So, for example, I'm in the Slideshow module now, and by the way, if you've never been into the Slideshow module, and I know a lot of users haven't, because most people only use Library and Develop, you can make a pretty decent slideshow, specifically because you have all the metadata that is in your file to work with. So for example, if I'm doing a slideshow for the local camera club, half of the time people are more interested in what I shot the camera with than, or what I shot the image with, than what's actually to see in the image. So you can display all those settings. This is a combination of metadata variables, and you can create your own. Now, this is not the tip, but I'm slightly digressing because I think it's a very cool feature in the Slideshow text template editor. You can create your own metadata edits, same goes for captions or titles or whatnot, and you can overlay these on your slideshows. Now suppose that you want to use this for some reason in a PowerPoint. And I'm not just talking about the photo, but the actual layout with this information on it. Would be good if I could export it as a JPEG. Well, I see export PDF and export video. I don't see export JPEG. Well, the trick is, again, as you might guess, to hold down the Option key, because what happens then is that the Export PDF button turns into the Export JPEG button. And so you can export your entire slideshow as individual JPEGs, and then use them online or do whatever you want with them. So that's it for this week's video. 10 useful Lightroom tricks with the Option or the Alt key. I hope you liked this video. If you like it, please subscribe to the channel. That way you will be notified first before everybody else of new updates, new videos, new tutorials and whatnot. Thank you for watching and see you later.